Hey, everybody. Thank you for patiently waiting. I am here. We are going to react to that presidential debate that we just watched. Yeah, I was just on RT and now I'm here talking to all of you. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. We're going to do it yet again. We're going to have yet another late night conversation, this time reacting to the debate. So if you all are ready, let's do it.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
All righty, everybody. So the way this works, this is a late night stream of just kind of me reacting to the presidential debate that was just, aired, that was just on. So the way it works is I'll give my remarks. I'll give my initial reaction to the debate. Any super chats or questions people have got, just keep them rolling in. Then we'll do a roll call. Then I'll answer them and then we'll be done. I'll give you my initial reaction to that presidential debate, that train wreck that we just watched. So first things first. So like I said, super chat questions coming on in, then the roll call, and then I answer them. But first, my opening remarks. So yeah, the first reaction that I have to that, do you realize how out of the ordinary this entire debate was? I feel like mainstream media is downplaying how abnormal this debate was. First of all, neither Joe Biden nor Donald Trump have been nominated by their respective parties. The Republican Party has not nominated Donald Trump yet. The Democratic Party has not nominated Joe Biden yet. It is June. The conventions are set to take place at the end of July and the end of August. The election is in November. Why did we have a presidential debate tonight? What in the world caused them to have a presidential debate in June? That's the first thing that was off. Second thing that was off. Why was there no studio audience? That's pretty standard at presidential debates. You've got a studio audience that applauds. You get people town hall style. They ask questions. No studio audience. Third thing, why did they mute the microphones of the candidates so they couldn't interrupt each other and respond to each other? Why was the response time so short? I mean, there's so many questions. This whole debate was completely out of the ordinary. It shouldn't be happening until at least September. They don't generally do the debates until September. Neither of these candidates have been nominated. They generally have a studio audience, but they just decided, and it was at the CNN headquarters in Atlanta. Debates are almost always at a university. But they decided, nope, we're going to do it at CNN headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. We're going to drag our candidates out before the lights, and they're going to mute each other's mics so they can't interrupt each other. Okay. So we had the first debate. Epic train wreck for Joe Biden. And I don't need to tell you that. The whole mainstream media is noticing that. He looked like a deer in the headlights. He looked like a frightened man. My wife and I watched it together. My wife was dying laughing. She was enjoying it. She was cracking up. At one point, there was the part where Trump said, we call you you called black people super predators, and Biden, his eyes went like this. What? It was, he looked scared. He looked like he didn't know where he was. He looked like he was caught in traffic. He looked like startled. He looked like, it was bad. I had trouble hearing Biden's voice. At one point, I had a really hard time understanding what he was saying in his tired and raspy voice. Now they've been saying, well, that was because he has a cold. But you'll notice he was out campaigning earlier today. So if he has a cold, why didn't they have him stay home and at least try to get better for the debate? Something's off. Something is really, really off about all of this, right? Joe Biden was out campaigning today. He's got a raspy voice because he has a cold. There were times where he forgot what he was talking about in mid-sentence. It was bad. It was very bad. This was an epic loss for Joe Biden. I'm not really sure you can really call it a win for Trump necessarily. It's kind of a default win. I feel like Trump could have just gotten up there and done his standard Trump thing. Any politician would have won against this. This was epic. And there's already stuff going around. There was already talk that the Democrats are going to replace Biden as their candidate. And there's talk that this debate may have been set up in a way to make sure that happened. But honestly, I thought this debate was set up in order to kind of help Biden get through it. If Trump had been able to interrupt him, it would have been manslaughter out there. It would have been a massacre. And it was kind of a massacre anyway, but Trump wasn't able to interrupt Biden. The short questions. Biden was really not hit. Biden was really not hit with tough questions. Now I got to say a couple things. First of which is that what always annoys me in these debates is how lies about foreign policy and premises about foreign policy are rolled out there completely unchallenged. Both Trump and Biden lied about Russia excessively, and they said things that are not true. Biden, for example, he said that, oh my God, he started his thing about they're going to invade Europe. Putin is going to go take over Europe, all this stuff. That's not going to happen. Right. And at no point has Russia expressed any desire to conquer Western Europe, to conquer the NATO countries. And he said, they're going to do that. And he said that he was going to take Kiev in 5 days. Russia has never stated that their goal is to take Kiev. They've never said that. At no point have they ever said that their goal is to conquer Kiev or conquer all of Ukraine. They never said that. Their goal is denazification. Their goal is protecting and respecting the sovereignty of the people of the eastern regions who declared independence from the Ukrainian government in 2014. And they held off all this time. So that didn't happen. It also was kind of comical that when Biden was listing NATO countries that he considered to be, part of NATO, one of the countries he mentioned was none other than Belarus. He mentioned Belarus as a NATO country. So there you go. Belarus was a NATO country. That was certainly special. Belarus was listed as a NATO country by Joe Biden. Hold on, just gotta put something here on my phone. Sorry about that. You have some days where you're being pulled in about every different direction, but it happens. It happens. All righty. But anyway, so hold on. So we have Biden who thinks that Belarus is part of NATO and is talking about all of that. But you'll notice Trump, when he was defending himself, Trump sticks to this line of the war in Ukraine never would have happened if he was president. If he was commander in chief, the war never would have happened. And he's going to settle it. He's going to finish the war. He's going to settle the conflict. He completely dodged the question when asked if he would settle it on the recent peace terms that the Russian president gave. He didn't answer the question. That's a good sign, in my opinion, because if Trump were to answer that question affirmatively, he would be slaughtered. And, so the fact that he didn't answer the question is a good sign. I will say also that it was a good sign that Donald Trump brought up the Hunter Biden laptop story and how it wasn't Russian propaganda. It was a good sign when Donald Trump brought up the fact that Biden fired the prosecutor who was looking into Burisma Holdings, the company that his son Hunter Biden worked for and was getting paid all kinds of money for, even though he had no experience in natural gas or energy companies. So that was all very interesting. What I thought was weird, about Trump, first of all, he said that, under Bush, Russia seized all this territory, grabbed all this land. Under Obama, they grabbed all this land, but when I was president, Russia didn't grab any land. What land did Russia grab under Bush? I mean, what is he talking about there? Russia's not even grabbing land now. If you look at what's happening, right? And it's not a land grab by Russia. I mean, is he talking about the war in South Ossetia, the whole Georgia thing? Well, that was South Ossetia is a territory that has, when Georgia broke apart and became an independent country from the Soviet Union, they did not feel they were part of Georgia. They're a territory that is sympathetic to Russia, South Ossetia. And out of the blue, the U.S.-backed Georgian government in 2008 attacked that territory. And so Russia retaliated to protect South Ossetia because they're obligated to do so. That was not a seizure of territory. South Ossetia had long been independent. That was weird. The other thing was, the Crimea thing, right? I guess you could say that happened under Obama, but, Crimea has been part of Russia since the beginning of time, practically. I mean, for hundreds of years. And the only reason that they were part of Ukraine was Khrushchev made a deal and signed it over to Ukraine. And then after the fall of the Soviet Union, there was an arrangement that they would be part of Ukraine, but Russia would keep their big naval military base there. And then after the USA toppled the Ukrainian government, it became a question of whether or not Russia would get to keep their military base there. So the peninsula of Crimea voted to join with Russia. I've been to Crimea. I have seen what Crimea is like. The people there are Russian. There you go. The other thing that I thought might be worth commenting on was, there is widespread opposition to what Israel is doing in the United States. Widespread opposition to it. Huge protests on the campuses, huge public criticism of support for Israel. But both candidates presented themselves as being pro-Israel. And the worst moment in the debate, I thought, was a line that I believe was rehearsed. It looked like a rehearsed debate prep line. I don't think it was made up on the spot, where Donald Trump called Joe Biden a Palestinian. He said, "You sound like a Palestinian, but they hate you too because you're a weak one," or whatever. That was weird. That was very, very, very odd. And it's, who is Trump trying to appeal to? Because why is Palestinian an insult? Right? That's horrible. There were a number of things that Trump said that were objectionable. He claimed that Biden is financing the Islamic Republic of Iran. And this is a claim that I've seen in the Alex Jones universe and all of that somehow Biden is the mastermind of October 7th because Iran got some of their money in South Korea unfrozen, which is true, right? Iran had money in a South Korean bank. It was frozen. And Joe Biden, in some kind of negotiation, got them to get their own money back. Every time Iran gets its own money back, they declare that Iran is being given money, right? When Obama unfroze a whole bunch of Iranian money that had been frozen in American banks at the time of the Islamic Revolution, they said he just gave billions of dollars to Iran. No, the USA stole billions of dollars from Iran in 1979 in response to their revolution. And now 35 years later, they got it back. And South Korea, there was some bank account that they determined was Iranian money. The US government arranged for the South Korean government to freeze it. And in some kind of negotiation, Iran got their money back. Now, what in the world does that have to do with October 7th? Nothing, right? Iran is a country in the Middle East that supports the Palestinians vaguely, but, I mean, they're not the only country that offers some support to the Palestinians. And the idea that October 7th happened because Biden unfroze some money, that is crazy. That is tinfoil hat stuff on another level. Iran is a separate country. Iran is not in Gaza, right? And whatever support Iran gives to the Palestinians did not make October 7th happen. I mean, that's just, there's a lot of support going to the Palestinians from different places, but they were not using Iranian weapons or anything like that. And the money that was given to Iran, there's no proof that then went directly to Hamas and told Hamas, now do October 7th. Hamas are not Shia. Hamas are Sunni Muslims. They are the Muslim Brotherhood, and they're formerly the Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine. They consider the Islamic Republic of Iran to be Shia apostates. Hezbollah is sympathetic to Iran and draws inspiration from the Islamic Revolution. The Houthis certainly do, but Hamas is a different organization entirely. Hamas is very much the Muslim Brotherhood current. They're secular Sunnis. They're not secular, but they're Sunnis. They're Muslim Brotherhood Sunnis. They're what some call westernized Islam. They're closest to Turkey and the Qatari monarchy in terms of their religious outlook and their geopolitical outlook. Hamas did not support the Syrian Arab Republic. Hamas, was very opposed to Gaddafi in Libya. So that's just not accurate. And that is what Donald Trump said. And also, we know Netanyahu is on his way to the United States, and he'll be giving a speech before the U.S. Congress very soon to present his case. And there's political turmoil back home in Israel right now. And they've turned the hostages, in which you would think would be something that would work in Netanyahu's favor. It's been flipped because now they're blaming Netanyahu for the fact that he's continuing his onslaught in Gaza and he's not negotiating the return of the hostages. Very interesting to see how this is playing out. And we have a weird moment where Biden doesn't want to fight Netanyahu directly, but it's pretty clearly that Netanyahu, despite having a huge amount of he's got a free pass from the Western governments, they still don't appreciate how far he's pushing the envelope, and they would like to restrain him to some degree or other. He wants an all-out confrontation with Iran and its allies throughout the region, whereas the United States has calculated that would not be in their long-term interest. And a lot of Israelis have calculated that it wouldn't be in Israel's long-term interest, right? And you'll notice that, the U.S. military response to Yemen, I was on a medical mission to Yemen. I wrote this book, Who Are the Houthis? What Are They Fighting For? Recently. It's the best book on the Yemen conflict that you'll ever find. I talk about the Houthi movement, where they came from, et cetera, how they're kind of a model for an anti-imperialist movement. But anyway, I talk about that because if you look at the whole situation, the Houthis in Yemen, the United States is afraid to really go all in against them. Why? Because they don't want to provoke an all-out conflict with Iran-aligned anti-imperialist forces throughout the region. Because at this point, that would benefit the Islamic Revolution, right? The Houthis are there in Yemen every day waving their guns around. They have rallies of 2 million people every few days. They're saying, please come invade Yemen. Right. The only way they can stop the Houthis from carrying out their naval operations, their blockade in the Red Sea, would be to go all in Yemen. Right. They shot a few cruise missiles here. It's not going to stop them. right? And Yemen is a mountainous country, and those Houthis are ready. I mean, and they'll be up there in the mountains with their sniper rifles and with their rocket launchers and all of that, and they'll be totally ready to fight the U.S. invaders. And they've studied what Hezbollah did when Israel invaded Lebanon, and they're ready to fight the invaders. They're saying, we dare you, come invade Yemen. And if they did go into Yemen, if the United States full on invaded Yemen with ground forces, the entire Muslim world would be cheering for the Yemenis. Whereas if it was not under these circumstances, it would be different. I mean, there's a lot of, Sunnis who think that Shias are apostates. There's a lot of anti-Iranian sentiment among Arabs, etc. But right now, Israel is considered the main threat. The Houthis are doing more than anybody to oppose Israel. Iran is seen as the main target and force of opposition to Israel. Israel is looking to provoke a confrontation with Iran, and the United States is looking at the Muslim world and saying, if that happens, Iran and its influence and the amount of Muslims around the world that will pivot into the Iranian axis of resistance and to supporting it will be massive. And Iran will become the face of Palestinian resistance. All the Muslims of the world pretty much support the Palestinian resistance. That would backfire. Netanyahu does not care. And Netanyahu almost kind of wants Iran to get stronger to some degree or other, because the Iranian threat is the main way that Netanyahu builds up his political career. He is aligned with the weapons contractors, and he's aligned with the hard Israeli right, and he needs there to be an Iranian threat in order to play up the idea that Israel's in danger, that they need more weapons, etc. Right? Reconciliation, de-escalation with Iran is the last thing that Netanyahu wants. That's why when Obama signed the Iran nuclear deal, Netanyahu came to the U.S. Congress to speak against it. And to be so opposed to it. And there were a number of Israeli generals who urged Netanyahu not to do it, but he still did it because he realized that his political future is dependent on there being this boogeyman of Iran. And what Obama was trying to do with the Iran nuclear deal was boost Rouhani, right? Rouhani is the reformist wing of Iran. And Obama was really hoping to make Rouhani and the Iranian reformists into the Iranian Gorbachevs. And the idea was there'd be a de-escalation, there'd be more American businesses, et cetera, go into Iran. The reformist, wing that wants to, move Iran in a Western and market-oriented direction would get boosted, and gradually, that would set the stage for some kind of color revolution, kind of like when Gorbachev was arrested, the hardliners arrested him, and then the Yeltsin people were out in the streets. I mean, we've seen this model before, right? You divide the ruling party between the moderates and the hardliners. You start boosting the moderates as much as you possibly can, to the point that the hardliners have to arrest the moderate. Then you have people going out in the streets to support the moderate, and then that's your color revolution. And then the military, the factions of the military that are pro-US take over. That's not going to work in Iran because the Revolutionary Army, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, is the primary military entity in Iran. It's actually the biggest economic entity in Iran. And they are loyal to the supreme leader, and they're not going to defend some moderate leader. At this point, that strategy is not very effective, but that's what Obama was trying to do. Obama was hoping Rouhani would be the Iranian Gorbachev. And he tried to boost Rouhani with the Iran nuclear deal, but almost immediately after the deal went into effect, Congress put more sanctions on Iran. There was retaliation against Iran and all of its allies throughout the region. In Nigeria, Sheikh Ibrahim Zakzaki was taken into military captivity. In Saudi Arabia, Sheikh Namir al-Namir was beheaded. Immediately. And then after Trump got in, Trump ripped up the nuclear deal. And then from there, Trump murdered Qasem Soleimani, who he referred to as this big terrorist in the remarks tonight. And that is false, completely false. No one has killed more ISIS fighters than Qasem Soleimani. Qasem Soleimani was an anti-terrorism fighter. I mean, he was very much one of the biggest forces against ISIS in the region. He led the Islamic Revolutionary Guards of Iran on the battlefield of Syria to just kick ISIS ass with air support from Russia. So the idea that Qasem Soleimani was a terrorist, that is completely false. Qasem Soleimani even helped the United States in Afghanistan. There was cooperation between the United States and Iran in Afghanistan in the immediate aftermath. I mean, Qasem Soleimani was an important military leader in Iran, but he was not a terrorist in any sense. But Donald Trump is still very much pandering to the Israel lobby, calling Biden a Palestinian, referring to the leader of Iran, Qasem Soleimani, as a terrorist. I mean, Donald Trump is pandering to the Israel lobby that already doesn't trust him to some degree or other. And it's interesting because right now, Donald Trump is doing what he's kind of always done, which is said, I'm so pro-Israel, look how pro-Israel I am. However, there are many statements from Donald Trump as he was leaving office saying that Israel betrayed him, Israel didn't have his back. There are statements to that effect. And there's also, many people have pointed to The Art of the Comeback. So Donald Trump has two books. There's The Art of the Deal, and there's The Art of the Comeback. And if you read The Art of the Comeback by Donald Trump, it says something in there that's very un-Christian. And it says that if you've fallen and you've had a setback, take note of who betrays you. And as soon as you come back, get payback on them. Get payback on them so that people don't betray you again. That's what Donald Trump's Art of the Comeback says. Now, there was a ghostwriter. I mean, he didn't exactly write that book himself. But Donald Trump, it was about, his Atlantic City, business failure and how he came back from that and using that as like a self-help strategy. But it says, take note of who betrayed you and, basically get revenge on them is what it says. Now, who betrayed Donald Trump? Mike Pence, Mike Pompeo betrayed Donald Trump, supported the prosecution of Donald Trump. And Donald Trump himself said he was the most pro-Israel president ever, and the Jews didn't support him. The Jews betrayed him. Israel betrayed him. So people are looking at that and saying, Donald Trump can beat his chest about how pro-Israeli he is. But if there is really a feeling on Donald Trump's part that Israel betrayed him, is it possible that when he gets back into office, he'll follow his art of the comeback and engage otherwise? We don't know. We really don't know. There are some weird things when it comes to Israel. There's a lot of politicians that resent Israel on the left and the right. And that I have noticed it's very interesting because both parties, and including even RFK, they all have to nominally support Israel, but there are little jabs that are thrown at Israel constantly that are from the Democrats and from the Republicans, all kind of saying, we don't appreciate you. And that is very interesting. That is very, very interesting. Obama, as he was leaving office, John Kerry was Secretary of State, and they made a point of, lashing out at Israel in the final days of the Obama administration. And, there were things that Donald Trump did throughout his presidency as he was pandering and bending over backwards to support Israel. He also, every so often, he would hint, they would put out a statement on Holocaust Remembrance Day and not mention Jews, mention every group except the Jews. And, there were weird things that were done by the Trump administration that were like, every so often they would take kind of a symbolic jab at Israel, because it's just like anyone in American politics resents how much power Israel has at this point, right? That it's at one point you could say that Israel was an outpost of the United States, was a tool of U.S. imperialism. But that's not, exactly the case anymore. At this point, Israel has veto power almost over a lot of things. I mean, Biden would like to probably be more anti-Israel than he is because geopolitically it's not helping the United States, but he just has to. Right? That's how much Israel has embedded itself into the American economy, into the American security, government apparatus, intelligence, military. I mean, Israel is so well positioned that, we've got U.S. laws. We've got U.S. states where in order to work in the American government, you have to, sign a document saying you will never boycott Israel. Now, what other country in the world gets that kind of special treatment? And no court has stepped in and said, no, that's not constitutional. So there you go. But I mean, it's interesting because I was skeptical about Biden being replaced as the candidate. I was very, very skeptical as to whether that would really happen. A lot of people said that, that Gavin Newsom is going to be the candidate, that Michelle Obama is going to be the candidate, or Big Mike, as some people call her. That's a whole nother theory. But, there's all kinds of speculation on the internet about that. I never took any of that seriously until recently, until tonight, really. That's when suddenly I was at the point where I had to go, whoa, hold up, and that's where I had to kind of do a double take and be like, what's going on here? And I had to realize that, okay, there's something going on here. They might actually, I think at this point, they will remove Biden. Why did they wait? Why didn't they wait till September to have this debate? And I think that something was arranged so that Biden could demonstrate his incompetence and people that might be opposed could remove him. Now, the other thing is Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is less popular than Biden is. Kamala Harris is deranged. But what was revealed in the audio tapes of the White House is that Kamala Harris ain't going to go, right? Even though she, quote, can't keep black staff, right? That was James O'Keefe revealed that, right? I mean, that she can't keep black staff. She's incompetent. She's deranged. Kamala Harris is dangerous and evil on a number of different levels. And I'll show you all the clip about that for those of you who haven't seen it. Kamala Harris is more dangerous than Biden is. Kamala Harris is probably the most dangerous political figure. But if they remove Biden, I don't think they will remove Kamala Harris, because based on what James O'Keefe released in the tape, Kamala Harris isn't willing to go, right? She is viewing herself as the first female vice president, which she is, the first woman of color vice president. She's not going to go. And I mean, what was underlying in the White House staffer talking to James O'Keefe when he's explaining how they want to get rid of Kamala Harris. She's unpopular. She can't keep staff. She's incompetent. All of this. They want to get rid of her, but they can't. What he didn't say was that, that he said, well, you can't get rid of the first black woman to be vice president. But what's really behind that statement is that she won't go peacefully, is what that means, right? Because if she was willing to fight, if she was not going to fight, they could get rid of her, right? They could say, you know what, Kamala, we don't think you're right. And she could say, you know what, for the sake of my party, for the sake of Donald Trump not being president, I'll leave. But she's not going to do that, right? And that's what's underlying it. It's not just her identity. It's that she would play that card and she would fight, right? Kamala Harris is very, very, very dangerous. I will say that much. She is extremely dangerous. So I don't see any super chat questions that have come in yet. I will put on the clip from one of the talks I gave about Kamala Harris. Peter Coffin actually made this, but it's, this is called The Truth About Kamala Harris. But if folks have any super chat questions, by all means, send them in. I'm happy to answer people's super chat questions. I'll see if I have anything more to say in response to the debate after this clip. Yeah, I've got a few more things I can think about saying. We'll see. But this is my thoughts on Kamala Harris.
It's bizarre. She's trying to frame herself as Miss Black Lives Matter, when in reality, Kamala Harris was the queen of mass incarceration.
Kevin Cooper was hours away from receiving lethal injection. Hours away from it. His lawyers asked that DNA evidence be acquired in order to make sure he was actually guilty of the crime. And Kamala Harris's office tried to prevent DNA evidence from being acquired. They wanted Kevin Cooper to be executed, but the governor of California disagreed. They acquired DNA evidence, and the execution was stopped. The New York Times tells us that she feels really bad about it, for whatever that means. And people can also recall that while she was head of the California State Attorney General's office, over 1,000 people were locked up for smoking marijuana. She presided over jailing a lot of people. And on top of that, the drug labs in the state of California that were being used by the police were turning up false positive results. And yet, Kamala Harris's office did not tell the defense attorneys or the judges about this. They knew that the drug labs were turning over false positives, and people went to prison because her office concealed that their drug labs were turning up false positives. And another thing about Kamala Harris, I don't know if people saw, but there's a video of Kamala Harris where she's bragging about how she jailed the parents of children who were truant from school.
I would not be standing here were it not for the education I received. And I know many of us will say the same thing. And I believe a child going without an education is tantamount to a crime. So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy. Well, this was a little controversial in San Francisco. And frankly, my staff went bananas. They were very concerned because we didn't know at the time whether I was going to have an opponent in my re-election race. But I said, look, I'm done. This is a serious issue, and I've got a little political capital, and I'm going to spend some of it.
Have you seen the clip? And she gets up there, and it's the same kind of thing. She's giggling. Yes, I had the idea that we could lock up parents who are truant from school. You know, I wouldn't be anywhere in my life if it weren't for my education, and so not giving a child their education is a crime, and so I jailed parents, and she's giggling about it. It's just so great. And, you know, I see so much in U.S. media. They like to trivialize incarceration. There's so many shows on Netflix and all of that where it ends towards the end where someone goes to jail, but it's part of the happy ending. It's okay. And they don't seem to realize what that means. You know, when one member of a family, when a father or a mother goes to prison, or a brother or a sister, it hurts the entire family. And when Kamala Harris is up there giggling about, oh, you know, I locked up these parents because their kids weren't in school. You know, yeah, kids need to be in school. If kids aren't getting to school, it's a problem. But the worst thing you could do is then throw their parents in jail. That's not going to help the situation in any conceivable way. But when she's joking about it, and she's laughing about it, Kamala Harris, she says, what did she say? She said, well, I wouldn't be anywhere if it wasn't for my education. It's about her. The big line when she was calling out Joe Biden, when she was trying to contend with Joe Biden in the presidential election, what did she shout at Joe Biden? She shouted, that little girl was me!
You know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
And then her campaign started churning out T-shirts with the face of 10-year-old Kamala Harris on them. Do you remember this? Yes. It's almost like she wants us to vote for her because she was once a 10-year-old child. I mean, that's what it sounds like. What's particularly interesting is, you know, you remember when Barack Obama was running for president. We knew everything about Barack Obama. We knew all about Barack Obama's pastor. We knew about Barack Obama's father from Kenya. We knew the school he went to in Indonesia. But Kamala Harris, barely anybody knows anything about Kamala Harris. Well, Kamala Harris's mother, who's now deceased, was from India, was a cancer researcher. And Kamala Harris's father, Donald Harris, was a Marxist economist and is a Marxist economist, a professor at Stanford University. He was an advisor to the government of Michael Manley in Jamaica. And he and Kamala are estranged from one another. He did not attend Kamala's inauguration as vice president. They're not on good speaking terms. But the more you look at it, it's very clear that Kamala Harris sees herself as a victim. The way Kamala Harris speaks, the world has been unfair to her. And she blames Donald Harris for that to some degree or other. We don't know why. We also, there's rumors, we don't really know what happened when she was in Quebec. We just know she never talks about the years that she spent in Quebec. But Kamala Harris thinks that she is a victim. And she wants the whole world to know that that little girl was her. And she wants vengeance. And she wants to make people pay. And she wanted to make Kevin Cooper pay. And she wanted to make those parents pay. That's what leftism is if it's stripped of economics. If it's stripped of class struggle, if it's stripped of a desire to have the people rise up and control the means of production, if it's just anger, if it's just revenge, It's just a call for destruction, a call for rebellion. That's what Kamala Harris is. Kamala Harris, she's very much a guillotine meme. That's what she is. It's the glorification of punishment, a desire for revenge, a desire for destruction. And that if you look at the history of socialism around the world, the strength of socialism wasn't the guillotines, it wasn't the firing squads, it wasn't the persecution. That's not what people remember the strength of socialism being. They just did a poll. 75% of Russians say that the Soviet Union was the best time in their history, but they're not thinking that because of executions. This was from a PBS documentary. They interviewed a woman named Tatiana Fedorova.
Stalin set a task. Build this or build that. And thanks to the fact that people trusted him and this enthusiasm of young people, it was possible. Remember, this was a country where people were illiterate, lived in virtual darkness, wore birch bark shoes. Even now, I think it's like something out of a fairy tale. How was it possible at one of the most difficult times to raise these great construction sites? It was only possible through the unity of the people and the love of the people for their idol.
And the reason Stalin remains wildly popular in Russia, it's not because he executed people, it's because he mobilized them to build that country up from nothing. This was a country... He built some of the world's largest power plants, he wiped out illiteracy, and he built a modern industrial country. He raised millions of people up out of poverty. And then they fought off the Nazi invaders, and then they rebuilt the country again, and a few years later they were the first country in outer space. And the strength of socialism was not that it punished people and that it persecuted people, but rather that it enabled people to go out and build and construct. I've said to many people, I'm not a socialist because I want to destroy America. I'm a socialist because I want to save America. And we have to save America from the horrors that are being unfolded by an irrational system where profits come before people. I want to save America. I want to build a better world. If all the apparatus they've created for destroying people, for imprisoning people, for breaking people psychologically, could be utilized to build and to construct, the popular power were put in control of the means of production and control of the state apparatus of the United States, we could build something very, very beautiful.
They want you to be mad at Russia and China instead of the looters that are sitting not very far from here off Wall Street, who are actively getting bailouts in the billions, arguably even in the trillions, for their gambling debts. That's what we're here against, and that's why we're taking a stand for freedom of speech, because they're going after the Young movement and anyone who stands against the imperialists, because they know we're a real threat and that's rising. They know we authentically represent the American people. They know that the American people are ready for a change and ready for an end to the wars. And that's why they're cracking down on our First Amendment. They're cracking down on our Fourth Amendment. They're cracking down on all the civil liberties we know and love.
Yeah, that's from Money and American Injustice, which is a great Center for Political Innovation film that was created by Peter Coffin. But it's on the CPI website as one of our films. So if you have a chance to go watch that film, I recommend it. Only a couple other things I want to comment on in response to the debate. I see we've got one super chat already from David. I will just comment on a couple other things. One thing that's worth mentioning is that Biden said that the United States is the most admired country in the world. And anybody who believes that is deluding themselves. And nobody in America, everybody knows that's not true. The United States is not the most admired country in the world. That's not the reality of the situation. Around the world, people are looking at the United States and the situation here, the rioting, the Capitol, storming of the Capitol, the Black Lives Matter uprisings, people are looking at the rising opioids and the crime and this is not, you could have said that in the 80s. I think in the 80s, you could have argued the United States was it had a universal, not a universal, but a widespread admiration. The USA was still doing a lot of bad things around the world, but it had a high standard of living. And with American art and culture and media, the USA had the upper hand. That's just not the case anymore. Most of the developing world is pivoting closer and closer to Russia and China at this point, with the BRICS, with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, et cetera. So there's that, and that's a factor that can't be ignored. The other thing is, Biden's whole thing about Charlottesville was very, very weird. It's weird, first of all, because, he's talking about Nazi swastikas and torches and all of this. And it's like, who are you aligning with? I mean, I could show you video after video of Ukrainian Nazi sympathizers marching with torches, marching with Nazi insignia, and he gives them billions of dollars. But it's even weirder because he kept saying they came out of the woods. There were no woods in Charlottesville. That was in the middle of a field. That whole thing in Charlottesville was in the middle of a field. There was a Confederate monument in the middle of a field. There was no woods, right? So what the hell is he talking about, right? And, they came out of the woods. He thinks that the people that were supporting the Confederate monument are the Beverly Hillbillies, right? He's saying they came out of the woods. He's saying, like, this is white trash is what he's saying. These are white trash. This is the hillbillies, those people out in the woods, those backwoods, I'm chewing on my tobacco. That's what I'm doing. I'm chewing on my tobacco. Get out of my way up there. I'm going back down to the woods. I'm going to eat me some roadkill. I mean, that's what he's saying, right? I mean, it's Joe Biden, has this image in his head of woods dwelling, poor white trash person. You know what I mean? That's what he's saying. He might as well have said when they came out of the trailer park, or when they came down from the holler in West Virginia or something like that. I mean, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but they didn't come out of the woods. They didn't come out of the woods, right? There was no woods at the Charlottesville event. That Charlottesville event, the more you look into it, that was very, very much, obviously no support to the Confederacy on my part. I'm one of the biggest supporters of Abraham Lincoln and the Second American Revolution. I'm no sympathy with the Confederacy or those defending that monument. But those events were made to happen. I mean, I won't say they were made to happen the way they did, but they were allowed to get out of hand. Let me put it that way, right? Obviously, there was no big conspiracy, to tell that guy to drive his car that way. And there was nothing like that. But generally, and anyone who's been doing, in the United States, right? I mean, when I was a kid in the 90s, it was routine. Every major city, every couple years, there'd be a Ku Klux Klan or neo-Nazi rally in the city. Right. And this happened in Cleveland when I was a kid. It happened in Toledo when I was a kid. It happened in Pittsburgh. It happened in Buffalo. It's just, every major city in the United States, every couple years, the KKK would get a permit and they would have a rally, and there would be roughly 5 of them that would show up. 5, 10, 8, 3. I think the one in Cleveland when I was a kid, there were 3 of them. And they wear stupid costumes, and either they're dressed up like Nazis or they're wearing white sheets or whatever. And they get up there and they do this very, very dumb comedy. They get up there and they're surrounded by TV cameras and media, and the police surround them to protect them. And the city will spend billions of dollars to make sure that they are absolutely safe. And there's armored cars and a barricade, and then 3 guys in sheets will get up and tell a bunch of racist jokes, like a comedy routine. And what I always thought was interesting, if I knew people who protested the KKK, and then the communists would all come out and be on the other side of the barricade protesting, and the anarchists and the communists, Workers' World, Progressive Labor, Revolutionary Communist Party, all the people with big red flags and pictures of Mao and whatever, they'd be on the other side screaming and yelling, and that would be that, right? And it was this stupid charade that went on in most of middle America throughout the 90s. It was actually part of what they call the late Cold War normal, right? Is that, that throughout the 80s and 90s, every so often, every major city would have a small KKK rally. And this small KKK rally or neo-Nazi rally it was almost a script or a routine for how it was done, right? First of all, there'd only be 3 or 4 actual Nazis. But there'd be a huge police presence to protect them. And all the mainstream politicians would get up and say, ignore them. I think the Democrats would get up and say, the best thing to do is ignore them, pretend that they're not there, focus on peace and brotherhood. And the churches would urge people not to go out and protest, but instead to go to a prayer meeting or something. And the Democrats would tell people would make appearances at those prayer meetings. And the Republicans and some of the Democrats too would get up and say, this rally, it shows how much we believe in freedom in America, that we're allowing these people to speak. We all hate them and they're awful, but we're allowing them because that shows how great America is. And it was this whole big thing about, oh, wow, free speech or whatever. And the communists would come out, and usually there'd be a couple communists who would get arrested. There'd be fistfights with the police. There'd be tear gas, and there'd be like rioting from the left, right, in response to the event. And the other weird thing that would happen was that in addition to the 3, goofballs that they would get to put on their sheets or whatever, there would be a crowd of people who were there to watch the Klan. And that was weird. Right? There would always be a layer of people that were not there to protest the Klan, and they weren't one of the goofballs in stupid costumes. They would be like kind of wealthier people and cops, police, prosecutors, and they thought the Klan were funny, right? And they would kind of be there in lawn chairs. They were not part of the Klan demonstration. And they'd be watching the Klan and grinning and laughing, and not laughing with them, laughing at them, right? It was very much a classist thing. Like, these are these screwy idiot workers we've got. But they also kind of appreciated the racism, right? These are cops and prosecutors who put black people in jail for a living in an urban area. And they're kind of appreciating that it offends the black people in the urban area that they're there. They're kind of appreciating that, these are people saying words we're not allowed to say. They're not politically correct. And so there'd be a layer of, kind of the people that you would see with Blue Lives Matter flags nowadays. They wouldn't be part of the Klan demonstration. I don't agree with the Klan, but there's an element of they find the Klan entertaining. They kind of find the Klan funny, and they appreciate that the Klan is offending the black people and offending the communists, right? I mean, that always happened too. And that was just part of politics. And when the Charlottesville thing happened, what was weird was that immediately the Charlottesville protest, right? Which again, if you looked at who the speakers were, it was, David Duke, all right, former Grand Wizard of the KKK, former member of the U.S. Congress. It was somebody from the Traditionalist Workers Party and somebody from the National Socialist Movement, and it's Nazis, but it got blasted out in all the Trump email lists. And that was weird because Trump was the Republican, right? And it was blasted out in all the Trump email lists, and all the Trump supporter email lists were getting blast after blast, defend this monument in Charlottesville. And there were a number of Trump supporters who said, no, don't go to this. There's David Duke. There's Nazis there. Like, let's not do this. But it was weird because a rally that was put on by Nazis got way more publicity. And then the day that the actual rally happened, generally what happens when you have those kinds of rallies is you get, the Nazi goofballs, and they're dressed in their stupid costumes, and they're surrounded by thousands of police. And what happened in Charlottesville was there was no barricade between the communists and leftists and anarchists and the Nazis. And they were mixing it up with each other completely freely. And the government was not interfering. Now that's what makes me think that there were forces in the power structure that said we need there to be a really ugly incident. Now that doesn't mean, I don't think the government told that guy to drive his car into Heather Heyer and kill her. I don't think the government did that. I think that guy did it, voluntarily. I don't think there was any conspiracy there. I don't think that there was a big conspiracy. I don't think the thing was a conspiracy, but I think the only element of conspiracy that I think there is that there was a feeling that it needed to get out of hand. That's what I feel was that generally events like that, they happen, right? And there's some kind of weird psychological operation behind the general allow Nazis to do their thing in America. But they allowed violence to happen on a level that normally does not happen. That normally doesn't happen, right? On the anniversary of Charlottesville, I was at the White House and I couldn't, as a reporter, even get close to them, right? As a reporter, I couldn't even get into the protest cage to interview one of the Nazis, right? There were like 14 Nazis and they looked like, teenage boys who, teenage incels, basically. It was kind of sad. But I could not even get into the cage to interview them as a reporter. There were so many police, and it was like, and I get the impression that some of the Charlottesville organizers, they were under the impression that they'd be completely safe, and it was allowed to get out of hand because they wanted to create an incident that could be used to demonize Trump, to incite culture war and division in the country. One thing that Trump supporters say that is true is the quote from Donald Trump about good people on both sides was not a quote about the Nazis. It was a quote about the Confederate monument debate. He said there are good people who want to keep the Confederate monument. There are good people who want to take it down. And they took the quote out of context. They made it sound like Trump was saying that about Nazis. Trump has done other things that seem to be pandering to Nazis. I will say that, right? Donald Trump tweeted a Mussolini quote. So there are many things that Donald Trump has said that one could argue is pandering to people with fascistic views. But that particular quote that gets thrown out there is not one of them. And the idea that Joe Biden decided to run for president because of Charlottesville is ridiculous, right? And he said that. And it's like, Joe Biden's been running for president since the beginning of time, right? He's been running for president. He ran for president in the 80s. And then it was revealed that he plagiarized his college thesis. And so he dropped out of the race. And then he ran again the next election. And then he ran again the next election. And then he ran again. He ran the time Obama was the nominee, 2008. Biden was a candidate and they ended up being the vice. Biden has been a standard deep state Democrat, normal mainstream Democratic Party Democrat for a long time. And the idea that, he was just so moved by Charlottesville, give it a break. One thing I'll say about Joe Biden is that mainstream media will show us dashing young Joe Biden when he's in his 30s, early 30s, dashing young Joe Biden. And they will show us Joe Biden's kind of makeover during the Obama years as this older guy who's working class, he plays up the fact that he's Irish and he's foul-mouthed and all of that. But there's this other Joe Biden that was there for a lot longer, that wasn't dashing young Joe Biden and certainly wasn't this kind of reinvented working class grandpa, that Joe Biden tries to be now. And that is fat, bald, middle-aged Joe Biden. And if you want to look at like 1990s, late 80s, 1990s Joe Biden, it's this fat, bald, it's like Homer Simpson, right? He's not an appealing guy at all, right? It's Homer Simpson, Joe Biden, right? And he's like grumpy Homer Simpson, Joe Biden. I'll try to pull up a picture of it. It's not very appealing. He's just this kind of, he's got a bad, bald head and he's chubby and he's just, and they don't want you to know about that guy because that guy is just kind of a jackass, right? And everything about him is just, that guy's a jackass, right? You know, and that, I mean, when you look at that Joe Biden, what most people see when they see that Joe Biden is they see this guy looks like a jackass. And here, I'll show you a couple pictures. This is the Joe Biden that is not the one that they try to emphasize. Let me put it that way. But yeah, here we go. Okay, I'll see if I can find you that picture. But in the meantime, let me. All right, here, let me rotate it. Hold on. All right, yeah, this is kind of the Joe Biden I'm talking about. This is actually one of the better photos of him. But we'll pull it up. This is the Joe Biden for most of his political career. And you know, this is crime bill Joe Biden. This is sexually assaulting Tara Reade Joe Biden. This is super predators Joe Biden. I mean, this guy, that's most of Joe Biden's political career. He's not dashing and young, and he's not this, this working class grumpy grandpa character that he is now. This guy looks like a jackass, right? I mean, this guy just looks like a used car salesman. This guy looks like, some kind of slimy political hack. And that's pretty accurate. That's who he is. I mean, that's not wrong. And that's the reality of Joe Biden. I'll show you another picture, but I mean, this is the real Joe Biden, right? And I mean, you look at this just reeks of slimy. This just reeks of, I don't like this. That's what most people's reaction is to this Joe Biden. Here. I'll pull up another one. And what's interesting is Biden is very much, I mean, he's a very much a political hack, right? But he's from a political family. He's like a career politician, one of these urban political machine politicians who comes from a family of people that were in politics for a long time. And yeah, there you go. Right. I mean, this guy, this is the real Joe Biden here. And this is somebody that just kind of reeks of political hack. But anyway, folks. All right. Why don't we do our roll call? And then after that, I'll answer your super chat questions. So first, names and locations, folks, names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Dustin Schlesinger in Cleveland. Lawrence Johnson in Chicago. Dushi McDucherton. Okay. Steve in Singapore. JDL, Missouri. John in Anaheim. Nate in Chicago. Seasoned Noob. Jenny Lynn in Cincinnati. Kieran from London Town. Shanty in Mexico. Megan in Ontario. Patch in Arizona. Kirby in Chattanooga. David Muller in Columbia, Cleveland Pirate Alex, upstate New York, Molly McGuire, Cleveland Pirate Alex, Jenny Lynn, Luca in Singapore, Master Jack in South Africa, Tony in Tasmania, Randy from Trinidad, Utica in New York, Mark Jones, Nick in Michigan, Elliot in Austin, Texas, Chris from West Virginia, Mill in Sacramento, Balthazar in Oakland, John in Honolulu. Welcome, John. Names and locations. We got Charlie in Green Bay, Wisconsin. We We got Anthony in Detroit, Junior in Florida. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Anybody else? Names and locations, names and locations. Eric in Holland, Rice from Adelaide, Australia, Ellie in Chicago, Neil Fraser in Hong Kong, Boz in Evergreen Park, Illinois. Names and locations. Anybody else? Names and locations. Names and locations. All right, so I've only got one super chat here, and I do probably need to get to bed soon because it's going to be 2 a.m. pretty soon, and I got to get up early tomorrow for a meeting in the morning. So if you got a super chat question for me to answer, send it. Now is the time to send it. Super chats are great because they not only do they do they support not only they give me something to talk about, but they support our community here. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell so you get invited to the next one. So if you got any more questions, any more super chats or Rumble rants on the Rumble, now is the time to send them. David Crow, also known as The Van out in LA, says, so did CNN just assassinate Biden? What was the plan? Well, it looks to me like there was some feeling among many Democrats that Biden needed to be replaced, but that there was some reluctance, and that tonight's events went down in a way that make the case for Biden to not be on the ticket. That's what it looks like to me. It looks like to me that tonight's events, the way they're being interpreted, and possibly the way they were set up, that a little too much intent there. You never want to imply too much intent. We always assign intent in our minds. Many things don't happen according to plan, but regardless, the result of tonight is a universal statement in mainstream media that Joe Biden cannot be the nominee, which means that if there was any talk before of replacing Biden with somebody else as the Democrat nominee, tonight amped that talk up. And for some reason, they oddly had this debate before the convention, which is very, very odd. And that wasn't in Trump's favor. If I was Donald Trump, I would not want the debate to happen before the convention because that would give the Democrats the opportunity to oust Biden. And if I was Biden, I would want to make sure I get the nomination before they put me on the stage with Trump. So something's off. Something's off. But I mean, it looks to me like folks that wanted Biden to not be the nominee are in a very good spot because at this point, I think it's unlikely that Biden will be the Democrat nominee. I mean, this was a massacre. I wouldn't even really call it a win for Trump. Trump just kind of did his typical Trump thing. I will say Trump displayed a much more discipline and maturity than on other occasions. When he said, let's not act like children up here. When Donald Trump, there were a couple times where he could have really punched Biden. He could have really took a swing at Biden, but he didn't because, it's at the point where it's just like, it's like if Donald Trump had just completely stomped on Biden, he would have looked like a bully. Biden, it was like Biden was his own worst enemy in this debate. And if Trump had hit Biden too hard, he would have looked like just a mean person. He would have just completely, Trump had to actually handle this with kid gloves, and he did so amazingly well. He did not, he could have really taken the gloves off to Biden tonight, and that would have worked in Biden's favor. So I look at this tonight. I will say, I don't like a lot of the things Trump said about foreign policy, especially. But I think Trump didn't have to do a very good job tonight, and he didn't do that good of a job. He was just up against somebody who was their own worst enemy. But I will give Trump credit for how well he was able to read the room, so to speak. And we know how Trump was. We remember the first Trump-Biden debate last time, how there was all the interrupting and all of that. And, if Trump had not been able to read the room, he very well could have backfired because Trump wanted to demolish Biden. I will say also, the moment where Biden looked the worst, the moment where Biden absolutely looked the worst. Let me see if I can find the clip of it. You know, it was Biden. I mean, it was a bad. It was a moment where Biden. I mean, you know, he wasn't putting together coherent arguments, but he looked way too angry, and he looked way too angry and way too emotionally invested in what he was doing. I mean, that's, you know, that there was too much rage and he was too emotionally invested in it. And that was the whole, you know, suckers moment. Like, this was the moment where Biden looked the worst. This was, I mean, he was better off looking like he didn't remember what he was talking about. Let me put this on. This is the moment that I think Biden came off in the worst. And I think this may have been a moment where Biden, his genuine emotions came through. A lot of being a politician is faking your emotions, you know, pretending to be happy when you're not, pretending you like people when you hate them, etc. And I think, you know, Biden was so off his game tonight that anger at Trump came out in a way that was very unhealthy.
World War I cemetery he refused to go to. He was standing with his 4-star general, and he told me, he said, I don't want to go in there because they're a bunch of losers and suckers. My son was not a loser, was not a sucker. You're the sucker. You're the loser.
President Trump?
First of all, that was a made-up quote, suckers and losers. They made it up. It was in a third-rate magazine that's failing, like many of these magazines. He made that up. He put it in commercials. We've notified him. We had 19 people that said I didn't say it. And think of this.
Yeah, that was, you know, like, yeah, I mean, look at what Biden's mouth is doing, you know, towards the end of that. It starts out, he's talking like a normal politician, but then look at his mouth there. That
World War I cemetery he refused to go to. He was standing with his 4-star general, and he told me, he said, I don't want to go in there because they're a bunch of losers and suckers.
Look at that. Look at that. That's, yeah, that's not a presidential facial expression.
My son was
not
a loser.
Yeah, look at the way his face is going here. Like, this is, oh, yeah, that's, yeah.
Not a sucker. You're the sucker.
Oh, yeah, look at that. Look at how the clenching of the teeth and the...
You're the loser.
Yeah. I mean, that's...
President Trump?
And look at Trump. Look at how Trump handles that, too. Like, he's just kind of like, look at that, right?
Suckers. My son...
Look at Trump. He's just like nodding his head.
Not a loser, was not a sucker. You're the sucker. You're the loser.
And he's like, okay. All right. Yeah.
President Trump?
First of all, that was...
Yeah, that was hilarious. That was, look at Trump's expression throughout all of this. You know, it's like, you know, you're the loser, you're the sucker. And Trump is just like, no. Okay. Yeah, got it. You know, all right. You know, all right. You did your thing. There you go. Yeah, that was the lowest moment, I think, for Biden, right? It was like Biden had, you know, that was supposed to be, I feel like that came from debate prep probably. And that was supposed to be an epic blow. And it didn't land. It did not land at all. That, you know, that looked like Biden, in addition to being not all there, you got some anger issues, dude. You know, yeah, that was not a good moment for Biden. And there's an element of desperation behind that anger. You know, and that's, Biden must be realizing he's losing, right? That he must have realized how badly he's losing, and that this wasn't just anger about you're a loser, you're a sucker. This is I'm losing the debate here. I'm being made a fool of on national television, and I realize it. And I'm just, yeah, that was, yeah. Well, Junior, I did react to this earlier, but that's okay. I can say it one more time. One more time, I can say it, right? Right. One more time, I can make my point, which is that that he didn't give a clear answer about whether or not he would accept Putin's terms for peace, which I think is a good sign, because if he'd have said yes, he would have been killed. And if he said no, he probably would have meant it. So by not answering that question, I feel like there's a chance he would accept Putin's peace deal. And then what he said about Putin expanding territory, completely wrong. What he said about making NATO countries pay for their weaponry, like that's a military industrial complex thing, but some of the military industrial complex people want to make more money. And then when he said that he wouldn't defend them, he said, I won't defend you against Russia if you don't pay. I mean, Russia's not going to attack them, right? I mean, Russia has nothing to gain from attacking them, but there's an element of like, I'm not going to play this game. I'm not going to play this game. It says, oh, Russia's so much of a threat. Yeah, I've just got to, you know what I'm saying? That I appreciated. So there was elements of it I could appreciate, but he's certainly better than Biden was on NATO and Russia, but he's not where I'm at by any means. What he said about Russia was taking land under Bush and Obama, like that was ridiculous. And there were some other things he said that were weird. Trump is not an anti-imperialist, and I will say when he called Biden a Palestinian, that was awful. I mean, why is Palestinian an insult? That was absolutely awful. He kept bringing up the notion that that somehow the war in Afghanistan happened, or the war in Russia and Ukraine happened because of the U.S. pullout in Afghanistan, which is absurd, right? And he kept bringing up the U.S. pullout of Afghanistan, and that was embarrassing for the military and all of this. I mean, I don't know. There were a lot of things Trump said that I don't agree with, right? I am at this point, I do think Trump is probably the lesser of two evils, but not by much, right? On Israel, he's awful. On Iran, he's awful. On China, I mean, there was very little about China said tonight other than stuff about jobs and stuff. I thought that was interesting. I would have thought China, hating China would be a bigger talking point for Trump, but I guess not. But yeah, I mean, the mainstream of the Republican Party has a lot of flaws, and so we shall see. So yeah. So if anyone else has any other super chats, what did you think of the abortion part of it? I thought it was interesting that, Donald Trump did try to somewhat distance himself from like hard pro-life people, which I thought was interesting as well. Donald Trump, he said, look, some people are against abortion, even if the mother's been raped or there's incest or even, but I'm not, he made clear he was not taking the full on quote unquote pro-life position. Right. And that was an important thing that Trump did. He kind of distanced himself from like the blatantly pro-life crowd. Right. He, and it was like the way he phrased it was like, everyone has their own heart or something like that, but I'm not one of the people. And I thought that was interesting as well, because there was an anti-abortion law passed in Arizona that Trump and his ally in Arizona, what's her name? I can't even remember her name. I met her actually too. I met her at Trump's court date. The Arizona lady, I can't remember. What is her name? She's Trump's, candidate in Arizona. I remember that he, he distanced himself against the Arizona law. Carrie Lake, right? Carrie Lake also came out against the Arizona law, and that Republicans tend to be in favor of states being able to outlaw abortion, but I think there are a lot more pro-abortion feelings among Republicans than you would believe, right? And I think, for example, there's many Republicans that are part of Planned Parenthood. There are many Republicans that are Malthusian, that think that poor people have too many children, things like that. And, I think that, that the anti-abortion movement is very much part of, building up evangelical Christianity as kind of, a mass movement to support the neocon right? And it's kind of, building up a counter gang for the neocon right. They had to build a mass evangelical movement. But I don't think among circles of wealth, etc., there's a feeling. Also, I've noticed that the evangelical neocon axis among Republicans is starting to decrease. Now, religion is generally viewed positively among Republicans, but the Mike Pence, Nikki Haley politics is not what it used to be. I mean, it's still very strong and there's a lot of money behind it, but most people that are Republican voters don't want to vote for that anymore. They want to vote for, Vivek Ramaswamy. They want to vote for Donald Trump. But, there's a layer, there's some voices in the Republican Party, Mike Pence, Nikki Haley, who's the guy from Arkansas? What was his name? I can't even remember his name. Mike Huckabee, right? That is becoming less and less a factor among Republicans, right? The 700 Club, crowd, they're getting older. Younger people are not there anymore. And that conservatism in America is changing. And I mean, I have predicted that in the long term, the Republican Party will become more and more a catch-all populist anti-establishment party, as it's the party of red states, it's the party of people in rural areas, it's the party of people that are economically dispossessed. And the Democrats will become more and more the defenders of the establishment party and the middle class, the cosmopolitan middle class party. And that I think that ultimately that will lead to the Republican Party being less and less free market oriented. And that already there's a big talk of economic nationalism among Republicans. There's a lot of Republicans that are anti-war, and that what the ideas that we used to associate with socialism, right? Opposing U.S. wars, sympathizing with anti-imperialists around the world, calling for a government that will kick the ass of the rich and powerful and reorganize the economy rationally. I feel like more and more those are going to become the Republican Party's politics, and it'll take a generation or so. But the fact that the Nikki Haley crowd is starting to die off, that it's older folks watching the 700 Club, that's what makes me think that the Republican Party is going to turn into a catch-all anti-establishment party. The Democrats are going to be a party of the cosmopolitan middle class and the conformists who squabble with each other for a seat in that cosmopolitan middle class. That's my analysis. But anyway, all right, folks, I have to go to bed because I have to get up early in the morning. But it's been a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to talk to you all. If you're new here, I noticed it was a bigger crowd watching here tonight. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the like button and the notifications bell. The organization that I work with and that I'm building, the Anti-Imperialist Mass Movement, we seek to build the Center for Political Innovation. You can visit our website, cpiusa.org. And I'm going to put on the closing music because it's been a long night and I got places to go and stuff to do. I got sleeping to do mainly because I got stuff to do in the morning. But there you go. So let me put on the closing music.
New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.